Every year, hundreds of people are reported missing in our state and national parks all over the country. While most of these folks are eventually located, many others seem to disappear altogether and are never found despite extensive search and rescue efforts. Join me as I count down 10 more of the strangest state and national park missing person cases out there. Number 10. On April 6th of this year, a 23-year-old camper went missing at Singletary Lake State Park in North Carolina while out on a church retreat. Jessie Grove was one of several campers who went out canoeing at the lake, but when everyone else returned a couple hours later, he did not. The members then notified park officials and a search was initiated. For the next several days, professional search and rescue outfits from surrounding counties joined the effort, totaling more than 70 personnel, using dive teams, boats with sonar, helicopters, and search dogs, searching the entire lake and surrounding area. After several days without a single trace of Jessie or his canoe, weather conditions worsened, complicating further search efforts. Due to bad weather, the length of time Jessie had been missing, and the lack of any sign that he left the lake, the search is now a recovery effort. Jessie is known as an avid outdoorsman, a good swimmer, and his fellow church members were baffled how he could have vanished so quickly when they were all within an eye shot of one another. This case is still ongoing, and I'll be sure to update you should any new evidence come forward. Number 9. On August 1st of 2017, a 37-year-old man named Travis Butler was reported missing after failing to check in out of his hotel room in a small town just outside of Grand Canyon National Park. Little is known about this case, including why and how Travis had planned to stay at the hotel, but some speculate that he may have wandered into the nearby trail system surrounding the park for a small day hike, according to park officials, who may have seen him prior to his disappearance. His blue 2017 Nissan truck was found in the hotel parking lot, but there were no clues pointing to his whereabouts or what may have happened to him despite all the searches involved. As of April 2018, no new updates have come forward about this case, but if they do, I'll be sure to let you know. Number 8. On February 1st of 2013, a 34-year-old named Jason Kyles disappeared inside the Annandale State Park just outside of Santa Rosa, California, while out on a day hike. Jason was last spotted by other hikers at the Lawndale Trail inside the park, and after that, he was nowhere to be seen. Shortly before entering the park, Jason had packed his truck with miscellaneous items, including a bird bath, some pictures, and his son's guitar. He left a note for his wife stating he was going to visit his cousin in New York and focus making money in the music industry. Jason, who had a history of seasonal depression, had also exhibited increasingly odd behavior prior to disappearing, and those who knew him were surprised to learn that his pickup truck was found inside the park a few days after he was reported missing. The 5-day search involving more than 40 personnel located his discarded clothes and shoes in a remote area within the park, and to this day, No other trace of him was discovered. Later on, a bicyclist reported that he may have seen Jason in the park, naked and chanting. Authorities theorized that he may have experienced a psychotic break and became disoriented, not recalling his whereabouts or even his own identity. Number 7. On March 9th of this year, a 25-year-old avid hiker and outdoorsman named David Blake disappeared inside the Kennesaw National Battlefield Park in Georgia while out on a short day hike. After failing to return home the following day, David's mother called park officials to report his absence. A search immediately ensued, which included several dozen searchers with dog teams, and they eventually found his car, parked near an overflow car park off Old Highway 41. Inside it was some of his hiking supplies, and his keys were left in the cup holder, which told investigators he hadn't intended on venturing off for too long. Searchers first assumed that he entered a nearby trail and decided to venture up on Kennesaw Mountain, but without a single trace of evidence pointing to this, they were left out in the cold, and even after 3 weeks of intense searches, he remains missing. David was noted for being very familiar with the park's trails, having hiked them several times. The man's mother stated that he was in good spirits prior to disappearing, and gave no indication of being gone for very long. Number 6. In October of 2012, a 48-year-old man named Doug Sutton Jr. disappeared in a remote area just outside of Asheboro, North Carolina. His relatives became concerned and contacted authorities when he failed to check in with them within a couple days of setting out to the area. A search involving over 50 people, several dogs, a dive team, and a helicopter crew conducted a 4-day search in the area and eventually located his truck in a remote area between the Sheets Gap and the Devil's Garden overlooks at an elevation of around 3,400 feet. Inside, authorities found several packs of cigarettes and around $100 in cash. Little else is known about this case, but there was no indication of foul play or that Doug intended to disappear off the radar. The case has been open for several years, and nothing has surfaced to explain why he would have drove from Asheboro 2.5 hours to an area where he had no known connection. His disappearance continues to baffle many. Number 5. In February of this year, a 71-year-old psychiatrist named Bruce Decker went missing inside the John Boyd Thatcher State Park in a remote area of New York. According to park officials, Bruce was last seen on February 19th inside the visitor center of the park, but it wasn't until Wednesday the 21st that his car was found in the parking lot with an expired permit. Authorities then called in a search to his residence and tried to contact anyone that may have seen or heard of him, but no family member could be found and nobody reported him missing. So officials assumed he was still inside that park. A search involving more than 24 professional searchers and a handful of volunteers searched around 2,400 acres before extreme weather moved into the area, complicating search efforts. The search was scaled back after several days, and not a single clue has turned up. It was speculated that the inexperienced hiker had only intended on a short day hike within the Indian Ladder Trail and searchers were baffled how he could have disappeared where he did, considering the time and resources utilized in the search effort. Number 4. On August 4th of 2014, a 36-year-old man named Mark Buckout disappeared while hiking inside Grand Canyon National Park. Park officials stated that he was last seen about 4:30 p.m. by other hikers as he trekked across the South Rim, just west of Grandview Point near U.S. Route 64. It wasn't immediately known what his hiking plans were for that afternoon, but based on evidence inside his car and those who knew of his brief hiking plans, he wasn't planning on being out there for more than a few hours. Nonetheless, a search team combed the area and spotted a body several hundred feet below the rim in the vicinity of his last known whereabouts. I wasn't able to find any other details on the exact identification of those remains, but searchers seemed to point that it was indeed Mark. Searchers and family members were perplexed how the experienced communication specialist ended up where he did, considering hiking conditions were perfect that day and Mark was not suicidal. Number 3. On January 25th of 2002, a 20-year-old surveyor named Christopher Thompkins vanished while working with a survey crew in a remote area near Warm Springs Road in Harris County, Georgia. Christopher was accompanied by 3 other co-workers, all of whom were walking back to their work truck after a long day's work. The workers were approximately 50 feet from each other, with Christopher at the back of the line. At around 1:30 that afternoon, one of the other crew members had looked away from him for just a moment, and when he looked back, Christopher was gone. The crew members backtracked only to find his work tools strewn along the road. His disappearance was reported shortly after, and nearly 100 volunteers searched the area in a joint effort with a dozen professional searchers, and on that second day, one of his boots was found just inside the woodline from the road, as well as a piece of blue fiber from his pants on a nearby barbed wire fence. The search intensified, and for the next few days, they expanded their search, but no trace of him had turned up. However, 5 months after his disappearance, a local farmer discovered the other boot about 900 yards away from the point where he vanished, and next to a swamp. All these years later, no other trace of him was found. I chose to cover this case not only due to the strangeness behind Christopher's disappearance and how it parallels many other cases, but also because of its proximity to Flat Rock Park, which is only a short distance away from Warm Springs Road. Number 2. In October of 2002, a 66-year-old retired Marine and hiker named Walter Reinhard vanished during a day hike inside Yosemite National Park. Walter's sons reported him missing on October 12th after failing to check in with him that night. The sons suspected that Walter, who was expected to leave the park that day, might have decided to stay longer once he hit the trail. They suspected that he might have opted for a longer hike, which affords a stunning view of the Tuolumne River Gorge. Searchers eventually found his car at the White Wolf Trailhead west of Tuolumne Meadows. They searched all the trails within a 150-mile radius of the White Wolf Trailhead, and no trace of him was ever found. Park officials have no reason to suspect foul play was involved, but they figured he decided to venture alone into those woods, and then something went wrong. Walter was active in the hiking club at the retirement community where he had lived near Tucson, but mostly he hiked alone, and even considering his age, many of his hiking companions were unable to keep up with him. To this day, the 66-year-old Marine remains missing. Number 1. In July of 2010, a 57-year-old climber named Eric Lewis vanished inside Mount Rainier National Park when he became separated from his two companions. Eric went missing when his climbing companions discovered that he had unclipped from the rope at 14,000 feet and simply disappeared. The three-man team was ascending from Gibraltar Ledge's route when a freak storm settled upon them, bringing high winds and visibility as little as 5 feet. According to park officials, Eric's friends, who were just slightly ahead of him, reached a resting point and waited for his arrival, but he never did. As they began reeling in the rope, they discovered an empty rope with a knot at the end. At this point, visibility improved, and they scanned the area and called out for him, but he was nowhere to be seen. They then proceeded to the summit in case Eric had skirted around them. After returning to Camp Muir at around 10,200 feet, they reported the incident to park officials, and a major search and rescue effort was kicked off. Mountaineers, climbers, guides, and helicopters endured a week-long search, but were unable to find any shred of evidence of Eric's whereabouts. The search was scaled back, and after another 2 weeks, it ended altogether. To this day, Eric Lewis remains missing, and searchers are still haunted by this case. I chose this case as number 1 because not only was Eric an experienced and technical climber, the amount of resources involved in the search should have revealed some clues as to what happened to him. And there you have it. As the summer season quickly approaches, we'll begin to see a spike in park numbers, and it's only a matter of time before more folks end up in the same situation. Be cautious out there, and you'll hear from me soon. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more videos.